students. So some of you have already graduated 1 year ago.
Yes.
Some of you are going to graduate now. So for the ones that graduated 1 year ago, Annie, can you share with us where you are right now?
Like what had changed?
In general, like what inputs has MDDI given you and what knowledge or, I don't know, resources or interactions with other people, what that gave you after 1 year and where you're now?
So right now I'm continuing the work at my lab, of course, but the final project that I have, it was really a good example of how to connect to the others and how this city and these other actors could integrate it into my own work. So I didn't continue my end of project, my final project, but just after it, I kind of wanted to test on the field directly the new knowledge I got. So we did this other project, which is a distributed manufacture public bench made by the person around in the neighborhood. So we were very rapidly, 2 weeks, very fast, connecting the different people, and then we built all together a public bench for giving to the community a public bench because they were helping us so hard during the pandemic. So that was a success, and we documented, and that was a really way of saying, okay, all that knowledge could be integrated into other projects. And then this year, I kind of like to continue this path because it's really interesting to link more and more people to develop a solution for the future. So in the same vibe this year, we connect different people, actually 2 more projects that I didn't talk to you about. One about a mycelium place where they grow mushroom, and a textile designer, and the FabLabs. So the FabLabs here act more as a missing part. If there's something in the chain that is missing, the FabLab could be part of it to solution and then make the solution happen. And we will probably do another one, which is fabricating A to Z, a textile from, how do you say, a grass? Unwanted grass? Weeds. Wow. Yeah, with element here. So it's really, we really applicate. This is the big output of the MDDI. It's applicating new project for solution, but applying in the city.
Nice. And for you guys that are going to graduate right now, how do you envision the work you did the past 10 months?
I think it will just keep, I hope it will keep blooming. So my projects around wearable technology and on how that also work not only with community, but professional performing arts companies and traditional theaters in modernizing their props and costumes. So a lot of that technology is in the maker world, but actually haven't been too much implemented in the industry, especially in real performance, especially traditional performance, and that kind of fusion is still very new, and I'd love to work with artists around the world in bringing that technology to them. So I'm really excited, and I think for me, because my day job at Hackster.io is very much online community, so MDDI actually brought me back to the earth and connect with people in human to human ways, and just a lot of different methods that we either learn from the modules, from the classes, or via our classmates are all very inspirational, and almost makes me who's very much involved more in the online world, in the metaverse, to come back down to earth. And yeah, our cohort has just a variety of different projects from around the world. It has all very been eye-opening to see the other innovations and designs that's happening all across the globe.
Nice.
We can I?
Of course.
Yeah, it's very fun what you say, because we in Montreal in my lab we always say all the work that is digital, it's meant to make something more physical, you know.
Wow.
And then when you take this kind of plane at the bottom, then you can take element, put it in the digital, and then work it out, and then put it down. So it's only another
The
world,
layer
but
one
it's
and
nice.
layer. I think it's that whole circular. It's that whole circular concept. You know, the bi-directional exchange, and really, it was it created this new, maybe like philosophy that I'm very now ingrained in me.
I play it very well.
It is inspiring. I think the work that both of you have done, find a lot of inspiration in how you've approached it. I'm at a point where I'm not entirely sure what direction this work is going to take. So it's interesting to hear from you how it has been for the year. And there's so many possibilities that have opened up. Because I've been looking at microplastics and food, and how microplastics are everywhere, and especially within us. So technically we are connected to everything that is equally affected by microplastics. So trying to find a way to connect the dots and see all the different projects that get involved along the way. And it's very difficult for me to say, like, okay, this is super exciting, this is super interesting. It's very difficult for me to say, no, I don't want to jump down that rabbit hole. It's like, okay, how do I incorporate that into the work that I'm already doing? So I love what you said about, linking it all together, bringing it back to the ground. So the work that I was doing before the program seemed to me, at least in my mind, quite separate. We were talking about this earlier, right? Three different, I like to separate things in threes.
You have something with the Trinity, I think. It's powerful.
Because otherwise it just gets overwhelming. There's another project, and another project, and another project. And it's super interesting, all of them, right? So to try and organize them and try to compartmentalize in threes. And then each part of those, each third can have its own threes.
We should have another conversation on that. I'm interested, Like, wow.
It's exponential.
Sacred geometry.
It can be. So the lower you get in that tree, it gets impossible to handle, but you know how low you're going.
Yeah.
So you know at which level of complexity you have to deal things with. But yeah, the microplastics thing is everywhere. And it touches on so many different things. There's synthetic fabrics, there's microorganisms, there's food, there's industrialized production, single-use plastic production, consumer behaviors, all of these things.
Even in different scales as well, right?
Exactly. So the issue is not really being addressed. From a personal point of view, I feel like people understand that there is an issue, but we don't really have like a personal flavor as to how we should deal with it, and we're just looking for narratives. And the narrative that tends to predominate is whatever is the industrial norm, or the political, whatever the government policy is about recycling. And that tends to be dominated by industrial processes, which kind of makes sense. But from a personal perspective, it comes down to guilt.
Oof, yeah.
Like all of these campaigns are like, you shouldn't be consuming that much plastic.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not my fault. What do you mean I shouldn't be doing this?
What other options do I have?
Exactly. And so we feel guilty that we are causing this problem.
Yeah.
And so we don't blame anybody else but ourselves. And then we have this paralysis, we don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So trying to cut through that was the challenge.
But this is crazy, because many years ago, when we bring this climate change problem, it was exactly in the same way.
Yeah.
And we discovered that it was not the good way to do it, because right now they do this kind of unit measurement to climate change. And right now people are so scared, they are so guilty, they don't want to believe it anymore. They don't want to do it with all. So we're kind of losing interest into this problem. and losing solution also. So this is very funny because this microplastic problem became after. And then we tackle it the same way that we know that it's not a good way to do it. Yes, exactly.
It was one of those
Broad.
unintended consequences. Yeah. So that lens really helped to be able to sort of zoom out and see the bigger picture, and at the same time be able to. So it's like trying to do two things at the same time: focus on the micro scale, but also see how it fits into the global context. And how we got to this point with the plastics on the consumer side is a consequence of trying to save the planet.
Yeah.
Like there's a previous generation that was trying to save the trees.
Wow.
Right? We wanted to cut down on the consumption of paper because we were killing too many trees. And every time you printed something, they would give you little reminders that says, look, don't do it. Think about it before you print it because you want to save the trees.
You're like the paper in the toilet, right? It's like you should use only two, how to say, like...
2 squares.
Squares, layers. It was like, okay, 1 and 2, okay. That's it. I'm saving trees.
Yeah, and then there was this, to save the trees, we switched to plastic.
Yeah.
That's why plastic bags happened.
Yeah.
And then we just lost track of it. Plastic was a good idea. Plastic is a
It's
good
a
idea.
good, it's a good
It
idea.
is.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful material
It depends how you use it, right?
if it doesn't wind up in the ocean.
Exactly.
Well, if you think about it, you can almost go to the moon with a trash bag. Resisting to
insane.
puncture, resisting to water. It's like it has all this quality, but we put trash in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
we're really not using it how we should be using it. And it's now got this really bad. Actually, there's another story that I mentioned before, and I have to mention this to you again. But because the saving the trees is one side, there's another eco story that actually drove me to this this challenge. The way plastics was invented was to try and save elephants from being poached.
Really?
What?
Yes,
Okay,
this was.
I'm intrigued.
Oh, yeah.
I'm intrigued now.
So there was ivory trade. Ivory was like the wonder material of its age. You would see them in corsets. You would see them
Insane.
in like handles for bread and all of this consumer stuff. Exactly, it was everywhere, and it was sort of a symbol of opulence. And you had money and you could be able to afford it. But it was this beautiful, had a nice aesthetic quality to it, and it wound up being used in billiard balls, snooker tables. That's when the elephants started dying in larger quantities.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, this was a colonial thing, with setting up pool halls and setting up pool tables as entertainment and whatnot. But apparently, that's where they were consuming ivory tusks in large quantities. So, in order to try and save the elephants, they invented a polymer that looks a lot like ivory.
Wow.
And that was the first mass-produced plastic. And they flooded the market with fake ivory to the point where killing the elephants was no longer economically viable. That was the way they sort of like combat this.
It did save the elephants.
It did to some extent, because it was a cheaper material. It was easier to use. It was easier to come by.
And now we're like killing all the
We're still killing
the animals in the ocean. Like it's insane. Not the elephants, but like.
Yeah, but now it's in the air. It's in the water,
Yeah,
so it's going
it's
back
everywhere.
into the elephants.
Yeah, exactly.
They closed the circle.
Sometimes I think we're not that smart, like, yeah.
It's a weird
But
cycle of
It's
unintended
an
consequences.
invisible problem. So how can you be really attached and beware of this invisible problem? So how did you tackle it with the MDDI?
So that, having that stack and that lens to be able to zoom in and out and see what elements those perspectives shine a light on was the most useful thing. And in the beginning, it was like, okay, fine, this is another framework. And I mean, I'm a programmer, software. We were all about frameworks. And it's like, okay, no, not another
No,
framework.
why mapping?
I mean, we have frameworks. JavaScript is something
Yeah.
you're familiar with. When JavaScript framework started to happen, everybody was creating their own framework, to the point where in Singapore we had a little community called Kopi.js. So coffee JavaScript. And it wasn't an actual framework, it was a place where we would meet and drink coffee and talk about frameworks.
Is that how you got into coffee?
No. This is like a pre-existing DNA type of situation. I think I've got a caffeine molecule somewhere in my DNA. But yeah, so it felt like, you know, just another framework. But when you start applying it and you start thinking about what it shines the light on, it suddenly starts to make a lot of sense. But it's with the practical application of it, where the data meets the ground, that it really starts to shine. So that was the most useful thing, being able to zoom in and out, establish the global context. And after COVID especially, I felt we had a huge opportunity to sort of re-evaluate centralized manufacturing. Because what happened with the PPE and how it failed to meet the needs of the moment put distributed manufacturing into focus, like it never done before on a global scale for 3 years, while, you know, human beings were in a mindset of existentialism.
Completely.
So, you know, I feel like that was an opportunity, and I feel like we haven't fully realized what that means for us.
You mean we didn't learn from it?
I don't think so. I mean, what's happening now? We decided to go and shoot and kill each other.
I think people have realized a certain resilience problem, in the sense of when it hit Canada, for example, like everything was produced at another state, so we're like the second person. So it's exactly that. But every person realized that if something happened, we don't have the skills and the element to produce here to save ourselves.
Yeah, it
We're
was
like
a huge
dependent.
wake-up call.
Yeah, and I think in petroleum, in
Fossil
some
fuels.
country, fossil fuels, they did this kind of work of like where we need a demand, so we're gonna work to diminish this domain. So it's kind of interesting, this kind of global problem, but local solution.
Yeah.
So this
So
is quite nice.
the three of you, Annie, you were in the first cycle, you guys were in the second. So another question would be related to these topics. How do you think this master's program will change in the future? Because it already did from one year to another. So how do you envision this in general? Like, what do you think, what would be your ideas on this program? What would you add or what would you remove to it? I don't know.
It's a good question.
I think during my term, because I was actually traveling around a lot, I think the original framework or the structure is very maybe targeted more towards you're
Local.
rooted in a community, and you're using the framework to go deeper, to work with the community. But because of my travel, and I think there will be more people have this kind of lifestyle in the future, the kind of nomading lifestyle. Maybe the course will change even to be more like distributed innovation. So I was actually talking to one friend yesterday in terms of like, he's like, when you're traveling, how do you go to the labs? I'm like, well, wherever I am, I find the local FabLab. And he was like, you can do that? I'm like, of course, you know, like when
You're
I'm
a
this
role
week,
model though, eh?
yeah, I'm
You're a
like,
role
this week
model.
I'm in Taipei, I'm gonna go to TED's FabLab Taipei. Next
Wow.
week I'm in Hong Kong, I'm gonna go to, you know, like the Hong Kong makerspace.
You should write an article about that.
Yeah, and to me, it actually felt really natural and default.
Yeah.
But I guess for a lot of people, they don't know that Fab Labs are so accessible. You know, across the world, and it's a network. And so I think even on that, like I was traveling to Armenia, and I had like one day in Vienna, so I just called up Daniel, and he gave me a tour of Hacky Lab.
Daniel, he was fantastic.
Yeah, and so I was able to see how different Fab Labs are also set up in different cities, and the kind of different programs they run, and the different conditions of different local conditions, or you know how they work with each of the individual communities. But yeah, I think in terms of a distributed lifestyle, you know, like of the future, how I felt actually through like the 4 terms, you know, we had was not going like one community, but it was almost like applying the framework or the Fab City mindset in like 3 different communities. And I was like, oh, in Bali, it could be done like this. In Chengdu, China, it will be like this context. Or in Canada, it could be like this. And I was able to even help, let's say in the Canada context, where I was in Calgary, to help some of the local makerspace in thinking bigger than their makerspace, in applying this whole Fab City framework.
And you already have it because you're rooted in a Fab Lab as well. I think that's also one of the conditions that provided you this attitude towards like connecting with other Fab Labs, people from that ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think this is a good example, especially what Ginger's been doing. You've managed to, I think, identify commonalities across the different local contexts that you found, and sets this course apart from the Fab Academy in a very distinct way. Because my understanding is for the Fab Academy, you have to pick a Fab Lab and then do the entire thing. This one was a lot more flexible, not because of the structure. I think it was mostly because of the people behind the structure.
Yeah.
They were very encouraging to it's okay, you can travel, you can always do this. I mean, I wound up trying to make a universal indicator in a hotel room in Hong Kong.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was.
You did buy your materials as well,
Yeah,
right?
that's when we were doing, was it the cabbage, the purple cabbage?
Purple cabbage.
Yes.
With Thomas
purple
Dugan.
cabbage. Yes.
You did the dye.
Yeah. And I was in Shenzhen.
Yes.
Yeah, because we just came from Maker Fair
The
Shenzhen.
Maker Fair, yeah. So soon after the Maker Fair, so I boiled the cabbage in Shenzhen, and then I did the test in Hong Kong.
That is great.
But yeah, we needed some kind of heating equipment to boil off the fluid. So there's a kettle in.
You use that?
You got like a can, an aluminium can. Put the thing inside. Put the can inside the kettle, and then.
Wow.
Fantastic, brilliant. I'm gonna take that idea.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
Could come in handy.
And you recorded sound bites from the train.
I did. So that was the assignment. The assignment was
Right.
to try and compile a series of sound elements.
Yeah. That's also another aspect I think I really enjoyed MDDI is the I want to say different tools, right? You know, or different because I come from a engineering background. So I went to school for engineering, so a lot of things like collecting sound bites, like interview stories, you know, like with people. Those are stuff that was actually never in my technical curriculum. And so all those like social aspect was very challenging, at the same time I think very inspirational. And as part of data collection, you know, in creating like your thesis, it's I think, you know, like in the program, Thomas was always like, you know, I know you can make stuff, you know, but and now you need to go take from the lab out to the community, and that's the whole thing. He always keep encouraging us, just based on I think our backgrounds.
Nice.
I think it was one of my favorite too, the mixing silos, you know, you have some class about fully science, very, very integrated, then you have like the microbiome, and then you have storytelling, and then you have, you know, it's very diverse, but that's the future in a sense of there's not one story, there's not one solution, but nature have multiple and billion of solutions for the same thing. And that's completely what we need to do. It's the same global problem, but it's going to have plenty of solution, and to do so you need to connect all the people and the element, because you cannot know it all, you know.
You know, in the software world, they call, you know, the developer who knows both the front end and back end, like full stack developer. You know, I feel like it's the coursework trained us to be kind of like full stack innovator, or full stack technologist or creative, right? Because it's not only about technology, it's like how, you know, it's about there's social aspect, you know, like once we get in, the first like starting of the program, you know, is like the centrino, you do the whole mapping, you do the whole analysis that expand your mindset, beyond the technical pillar. And there's like the social, economics, and more around people.
And now the last question, so we can wrap it up. How did this program change you as a person? Did this program give you, I don't know, did this, because I'm speaking from my perspective, when I did MDev, for me it was really transformational in many aspects. It wasn't just about studying, it was also finding things about myself, destroying many belief systems that I had. So I'm intrigued what happened to you personally, in your journey.
For myself, I'm really more multi-species right now. But really, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I say is let's take this human molecule out, and I open the window and I'm like, go enter, so it's really more
I love it.
It's really more, for me, in the inner center, very, very personal, it's a transformation more about we're not the only species on the planet.
Yeah.
And we're in this world that it's not us. We're part of a system, and we need to reconnect this human to this biosphere that we detach completely. We're completely detached, and now we have to go back a little bit. But how do we do this? It's in so many aspects of our life, with our clothes, our food, our guts even. What do you feed your microbiota with? What do they need?
Microplastics for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But it's to be attentive and
Amazing.
empathic of those other elements. The mosquitoes are there, it's bugging me, but I'm in their element. They need to feed.
Exactly.
What thing I should do in my city to just give it back? So this is my inner world. But also the second one is that I think it gave me the confidence to go to other person and say, you know what, I was thinking about that. Maybe we could do this and apply it now. Don't be scared of it's gonna be something in the future. Maybe we don't have the financing and everything. It's just there's many passionate people in the world, and maybe for now I have a no, but maybe if I have a yes. So just go out and see. Could it fix together? Are you willing to do this with me? And then test it out, and then if it's not happening, it's okay. But at least I did a step, and maybe it will germinate in the future. I don't know.
I love it. And you use botanical words as well in your speech.
Oh, really?
So it will germinate.
Oh, true.
I love it.
Multi-species.
Exactly.
The
You have
service
it
of the
already.
living.
And you guys?
I don't even know where to start.
It'll take 1 year to and then to test.
Yeah, no, the book that I keep thinking about when you were describing yourself was a book called I Contain Multitudes. And it's all about that. It's all about the microbiome that we have and the microbes that exist in our system. And it describes how numerous they are. They outnumber us in terms of cells. There are more non-human cells in each of our bodies than there are human cells.
Wow. That's interesting.
By a factor. So it's not just a small percentage more, it's almost 1.5 times as much. It's a bit crazy that we are not as human as we think. We are more microbe. But
I am coughing.
And we don't fully understand it, right? We don't fully understand what the microbiome is. We sort of have these very
vague descriptions.
Well, we think as a human, so how can we reflect as a non-human? Yes, exactly.
We think as
The non-human elements are something that has resonated with me throughout the course. But to answer your question, the thing that I realized was the reason I was doing what I was doing before the course, and the reason why that's completely transformed the way I look at the work that I'm doing, is I don't matter. Wow. In the sense that the reason there were 3 separate things is because I needed to separate them into three different things. But when I was able to take myself out of the equation, it's all connected.
Wow.
That's so Buddhism philosophical, you know. It's like woo, you know.
It was
the empathy, you know. Like
it was freaky because it happened not exactly like in a movie moment, but it was after we did that exercise of pasting stuff on the wall. Like you cut things out and sort of looks like
the sign, like the crime scene.
like the crime
the crime
scene.
scene,
Yeah.
the detector.
Pasted it all up on the wall, and it made no sense to me whatsoever. I was trying to do like the Miro clustering thing and all of that, you know, moving things around. And I was like, okay, fine, that'll do for the assignment. And then the next morning I looked at it and I was like, oh my god, the thing that's missing.
You were
That's not it.
Wow, that's amazing.
like this talks like this explains a lot about your non-egocentric personality, maybe.
Does it?
Yeah, why not?
I should probably look into that.
Yeah.
You should redo your
I might
map
need
of
some
the
help.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a book that's called Becoming No One.
Uh-huh.
You know what? Yeah.
Ramdas.
Okay.
Yeah. That's you.
I might need to
Read
talk
that
to you some
book.
more about that. I'm not sure how to navigate this, but interesting.
And Ginge, what's like how did
Yeah, I think it challenged me a lot. I think it challenged me a lot in getting me out of my comfort zone. And I think one of the very memorable a couple of implementations, you know, interventions that we did also made me realize we as human or even as society, we actually don't communicate enough. So a lot of those, you know, whether it's like workshops we design, you know, like or interventions we do, are so meaningful in really creating those connections. I think like what Annie was saying, like we are. I think a lot of like especially current like modern society, like we're so ingrained into like works and tasks, but there are things that's very fundamental and that maybe people actually even want to discuss or communicate. There's just no containers for those. So those are actually more, I think, highlight moments for me, and that's really transformative in terms of the way I think or I spend energy to focus my efforts on, like rather than some of like the more makey, like hacky, and you know, like enjoy myself in making light blink. You know, those kind of moments, and and there was also I think an element. A big part of like one of like in my project is about like culture preservation. So that kind of like a culture identity, I think is something that makes I become more aware and have more knowledge or actually have a more passion for, because you know I think with on what I've seen throughout like my project is that that sometimes actually motivates you from inner like much more, and then can really maybe shift change and for more like transformative ways in what people care about, you know, like that kind of like internal kind of like motivation. So yeah, overall I think just like the human aspect and the different ways we learn about in unlocking some of those, you know, like human elements are is something I've never seen in any other curriculum. So I think I will get, you know, from let's say get another master's in I don't know, mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering also, right? You know, it's like writing a thesis, you know, getting your paper published in academic stuff. So overall, I think I think I'm still transforming a lot of like to digest those non-tangible energy. I think coming from all the different people that if it wasn't for this program, I would never reach out to them in discussing that specific topic, right? You know, and yeah, I was like talking to my little 10-year-old niece, right? You know, about like cultural preservation. How do I talk to her about that? You know, and like
Using blinky LEDs.
Yeah. And and one of the coolest thing, you know, it was to me was like the intergenerational and multi-generational kind of co-creation. You know, where you know, like having like one of my niece and you know my uncle, so it's like 3 generations apart, right? And have them kind of co-create like a project, you know, around like using making principles. And they actually even like speaking different language.
Wow.
Because in the younger generation of Chinese, like they are all in Mandarin. But the really older generation, they're still maybe like speaking local dialect. And but beyond that kind of language barrier, even just within the family, right? You know, very tight family, and to break through that barrier, and with like a hands-on project, you know, those are again some of like really highlight moments. I think it's very micro, but I'm wondering how to turn that micro intervention into something that's more scalable.
That's very interesting because it's a way of unlocking your knowledge, you know. Kind of drilling to like learn in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like we learn, we go to school, but there's so many ways to learn and so many ways to develop skills.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting what you said about like by just with the family you can unlock a potential, you can unlock a knowledge.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in the Fab City it's a little bit like that. You can what do you want to preserve? What do you want to change? How do you make it more equitable? It's have a lot of questions that you can embed in your unlocking potential.
And the project that me and Annie, you know, had
Yeah,
the honor
it's
to
about
kind
that.
of like also work on this week during in Yucatan. They're very similar,
the
you know,
Fabric
like
Academy.
the
Fantastic.
Mayan, like the Mayan tradition, right? And remember like how we learn from like the tradition, and you create this amazing new neo-contemporary, you know, like backstrap loop. And then later we actually tested, you know, with the Fab Kids. So again, you know, that's a ancestry knowledge, you know, that we as makers are able to be a medium almost, you know, to help pass on that knowledge and help the younger generation, you know, to be using that same tool but in a different kind of context.
Reframing it. For our times, basically.
Yeah, and with that kind of cultural identity also motivates them to carry on that tradition instead of letting it extinct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Give a certain honor.
And neither one of you are part of actually that ancient tradition because you come from different countries. So you're basically like a medium, I think, right?
We're
It's like,
really a medium.
Yeah.
And we began this project in Bhutan because it was a problem over there. So we discovered that this problematic of keeping this culture and heritage about textile, it's a global challenge, but it's very different, depends of where you are in the world. So we kept the same elements that we learned in Bhutan, and then we had it localized here to this kind of communities and everything.
This is the same that you were mentioning before, Ginge, that you had these three like projects at one point, like you were trying to overlap how one thing could be applied in a different place or something like that.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of why the Fab City framework, it's not just a framework, a theoretical framework, right? It is really true, right? You know, in terms of from the local to global and knowledge exchange. And I think with makers like us who has the privilege to travel around the world,
Completely.
you know, that we're able to say, you know, like this is in Mexico, it works, you know, with these kind of like core elements, and in Bhutan, it's actually similar elements, and we just, you know, like apply it in that bioregion. And so what I really looking forward to do is actually that in China as well.
Nice.
So there's a lot of like minority textiles that's also similar to, you know, like the whole weaving culture. Yeah, and how they're trying to preserve, their cultural identity, when there's so much of just globalization and colonization going on.
Yep. We're getting away from it. But I feel like there's a sense now that it's okay to recognize this. It's okay to recognize that it's okay to acknowledge that it's okay to talk about the whole decolonizing efforts that are going on. So I feel like we're, heading in a positive direction. So with the digital as being the common language that crosses not just geographic boundaries, but also, like you pointed out, generational boundaries.
Yeah.
It's going to be super interesting. It's a nice time to be alive.
Yeah.
I think so, no?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward what's going to happen like in 5 or 10 years from now. I'll try to set this up again to have a conversation.
Oh, I thought by then we're just all gonna live on pills and living in